I would like now to move to Dr. Tim Jones, who is a reader in urban mobility in Oxford Brookes University, and who is going to look at the local authorities' response to the fund that UK government put forward for emergency active travel. And really interesting topic. Tim, you're there. Yeah, so the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Ying. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen.
Yes.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Tim from Oxford Brookes University, and I want to talk about a project. It's a very small scale project internally funded by the Oxford Brookes University for 12 months, and it's titled Post-Pandemic Equitable and Sustainable Transport, or the PEST project for short. Okay, so the backdrop to this, obviously the pandemic, as we've all been discussing, it's created unprecedented challenges for how we move around. And it's also created opportunities, if you like, to elevate active travel, walking and cycling, and micromobilities, if you like, to actually be part of the green recovery, the investment out of the pandemic and into a new green transport future in cities. Against the backdrop, obviously, of the climate change agenda and healthier, more equitable ecosystems. Of course, this will depend upon governments around the world, and not more so in the UK, where I am at the moment, supporting that legislation and investment, and having the power and the resources at a local level to pursue those types of schemes, such as Robert Noland outlined, that's happening in New Jersey. Of course, there's the political will. There's the local stakeholders that are involved in the different political groups contesting those changes, of course. And then there's obviously the public and how they perceive the changes that are happening around them, as Robert's outlined in New Jersey from his social survey. And, you know, all of that's against the broader social and economic challenges that we face. So none of that is very surprising, but that's the kind of the context. So in the UK, the Department for Transport announced an emergency active travel fund back in May 2020. And this was really to accelerate active travel projects, to support local authorities rather in accelerating and implementing those active travel projects. And those are of a temporary nature. So that was almost looking at things that can be put in very, very quickly within the space of, you know, a few days, a week, if you like. So pop-up emergency bike lanes being an example, pavement widening, junction improvements, and cycle and bus only streets. I think the impetus of that really was to take the pressure off the transport system in relation to falling patronage on public transport and trying to reduce private motor vehicles rather. The phase 1 awards were announced in July, so local authorities who had applied for that were awarded funds to implement those. But there was also a wider strategy, if you like, a more long-term strategy to invest in the creation of longer-term projects as part of an active travel fund. So not an emergency active travel fund, the active travel fund as it became to be known. And that was announced in November 2020. So roughly a 2 billion package, if Boris Johnson and the government are to be believed, to create this new, what they're calling a new era for walking and cycling. So what we've started to do is to look at where those funds are distributed throughout the UK. We've got a more dynamic version of this on our website that you'll have a link to at the end. But yes, that funding is to create, in the superlatives that the strategy puts forward, a largest ever boost for cycling and pedestrians, emergency bike lanes, trials of rental e-scooters that you're probably aware of. You know, you've obviously got the kick variety. The kicks is you scoot along on, but these are the electric versions that are popping up over the world at the moment. And also working with tech developers to reduce crowding on transport. So that's app development and information, real-time information. So the aim of our PEST project then is to increase understanding. I mean, that's really what we do. We're not measuring, we're understanding the place-based policies that are happening across the UK in relation to the active travel funds. So we want to do a sort of a deep dive into what's going on. So the way we're going to do that is to do a broad brush, first of all, investigate the scope and scale of the active travel fund projects. What are the nature of them? What's the commonality between the different projects across England? We want to map those. We've put in a data request for the Department for Transport, and they've actually come back to me today, and they are going to try and provide that for us in the next few weeks. That will allow us to map those projects across England and create some indicators to identify the types of schemes. We also want to do a survey of local authorities to see how they're progressing, the challenges that they might be facing, what's working, what isn't working. And then we want to do a deep dive on Oxfordshire. We're based there as a university, so that's our most accessible place. And obviously we members of staff live there, so we're able to witness what's going on outside our front doors, so to speak. We're also going to choose 4 case areas that I've studied previously on a previous project, the EPSRC Understanding Walking and Cycling Study with Lancaster University and Leeds University, ITS at Leeds, where we focused in on Lancaster, Leeds, Leicester and Worcester. That was completed in 2013 when we published a book of our results promoting walking and cycling, new perspectives on sustainable travel. So we thought, given we've got that rich context previously, it'd be really interesting to go back and see how the active travel funds are playing out in those particular towns and cities. Final few things. We want to identify processes of delivery. So processes being the operative word here, sort of the engagement strategies by municipalities, the various actors involved in that network in trying to deliver the active travel funds, and what frameworks, if you like, was instrumental in project delivery. So what were the key things that worked, that didn't work, that were challenges for the local authorities in trying to deliver the active travel funds. We have a stakeholder advisory group that we meet once every couple of months, and that's really to be guided by them in terms of what they would like to find out, and also sharing our lessons that we're learning along the way. So we've got a website, it's pest-project.org at the bottom there, which no doubt you'll have a copy of the slides to link to, have a look at. We want to chart our progress on our monthly blog. So very much a diaristic approach where we're explaining to readers how the project's unfolding and what we're finding out about the project. Final thing I'll mention, Oxford, where I'm based now. The approach there is ultimately creating traffic cells to prevent rat-running traffic through the cells and blocking those, or plugging, if you like, plugging those residential streets to stop motor traffic, but only to allow walkers, cyclists, pedestrians, people with mobility problems to access. So this is what it looks like. Those plans are live at this moment. It's going in this week on the road, literally where I'm speaking now. There will be just really basic, cheap and cheerful things like planters put in with a bollard for emergency vehicles that can be removed in an emergency, and that will hopefully redistribute traffic onto major routes and facilitate those local residential streets for walking and cycling. So yeah, watch this space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tim. So lots of the things which are very effective have been actually basic, cheap and cheerful. So I'm hoping very much, I look forward to your monitoring. So how long would this take over time? So that what is your time scale going forward?
Okay, good question, Ying. I mean, we were meant to start in September, but obviously we're at the behest of third parties and delivery. So there has been a delay on the delivery. Projects are operating at different speeds. We've only got 12 months funding internally, which will last us through to July. So I'm hoping we can reach out to the authorities within the uni to get further support to carry this on, or potentially going external to try and have some sort of longitudinal longevity to what we're trying to do.
Good luck with that, because you started at the right time, because the last few months may not actually be as active for the travel. So this is a good time to look at it. So good luck with that.
Thank you.
And thank you. And I would like now to introduce Dr. Haitao He, who is a lecturer of urban mobility, and intelligent transport in Loughborough University, and who is also going to talk about something to do with the changes in micromobility. Haitao, you are there? Oh.
He's texted me that he has connected.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, Haitao is there. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the floor is yours. So let's share your screen and.
So I think I'm sharing my screen now. Okay. Yeah. So thank you very much for the introduction. I'm Haitao from Loughborough University. And today in this short presentation, I want to talk about two matters. First, I will very briefly tell you about the digital tool that we developed to monitor the temporal and spatial patterns of shared micromobility using vehicle availability data. And then using this tool, I will show you some of our findings. How did micromobility usage change in response to COVID-19? Yeah.
Are you sharing your screen? So.
I thought I am. Okay.
Well, if others are already seeing your screen,
sure.
Then yeah, I think this is more like it. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah. Sorry about that. So, so then second, then I will show you using our tool, what did we find out regarding how did micromobility usage change in response to COVID-19. So, I think everyone by now is familiar with shared micromobility. It's essentially one of the fastest growing mode of urban mobility services in the past few years, and promotes sustainable mobility, but also causes urban problems. So there has been lots of research looking into their usage, but up to now, their usage is really still very far from reaching equilibrium and largely driven by unpredictable factors such as volatile investment environments, the disruptive business models, changing policy, and of course, our topic of today, COVID-19. So that is why we believe it is very important to have regular monitoring and ongoing understanding of their spatial temporal patterns. And that is also why we developed this digital tool that exploits vehicle availability data, which is a kind of data now in many cities are required to be openly accessible, including recently in the UK. So what we did is essentially we aggregate the vehicle availability data from all operators into one interface. And in our case presented here, it is for the city of Zurich in Switzerland. So starting from the vehicle availability data, we developed a generally applicable data collection and processing algorithm that essentially by scanning the vehicle availability data at an optimal frequency, we extract accurate high resolution disaggregate trip information. And this is the data we use to look into how the shared micromobility usage change in response of COVID-19. So let's first look at the overall number trip of day to get an overall impression for three modes of shared micromobility: the docked bikes, the docked e-bikes, and dockless e-bikes. So on the left is the number of trips before the lockdown, and on the right with the orange line is the number of trips after the lockdown starting mid-March. And we notice in all three modes of micromobility, there is a significant drop in their usage. So let's look at this a bit closer. First, let's look at the spatial distribution of the trips. The dark blue bar and the light blue bar are the daily trip number in the normal period and the lockdown period, while the background color of each area represents the ratio of this. And essentially what you need to know is that the green areas means there is a drop in the usage, while the darker the greens, the sharper the drop. And what we notice is that for all three modes of shared micromobility service, the sharpest drops comes from the city centers with drops over 50% of the usage, which probably represent an overall decrease in activities in city centers. So let's also look at the temporal distribution of the trips for each of the modes. On the left side, we have the weekdays, and on the right side, we have weekends. And what we notice that there is a drop in the number of trips, mostly coming from the weekday peak hour usage. So there are still morning peak and evening peak, but of a much smaller magnitude, which is likely an effect of the fact that most people are working from home during the lockdown. So we also looked at the trip durations, where the green part on the left represents before the lockdown, and the orange part on the right represent after the lockdown. What we noticed is that for all modes, there is an increase in the average trip duration, both on work days and on weekends. So our speculation on this effect is that people could be choosing to use micromobility services for some of the medium or longer distance trips, which means that this is replacing some of the public transport usage during the lockdown. So finally, we also look at the change of trip purposes. So what we notice here is that the biggest drop from all modes come from the drop in trips for leisure, work, and also transport, which is, again, not surprising as an effect for the lockdown. So I hope this has brought to you some insight into the changes in the micromobility usage over lockdown, and also a bit insight into the applicability of it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Haitao. This is a really good data set to look at these effects. Now, one of your slides actually showed that the drops seem to be between weekdays and weekends, seems to be in the mornings. Is that right? If you go back, yeah, this one.
Yes, the biggest drop seems to come from the morning peak, which is likely an effect that people starting working from home, and also with a more flexible working hour, and in terms of if they have to go into the office, which is probably why the biggest drop comes from the morning peak.
Yeah. Although, yeah. So are these 2 days or just one day? So so this is a Saturday and Sunday, right?
So this is the average number for all days over the period we were calculating this before the lockdown and after lockdown, which is about 1 month each. And on the left side, it represents the workday, while on the right side represents the weekend, which is Saturday and Sunday.
All right. So the hours as the x-axis is over 2 days, basically. Is it?
The hour, yes, the hour on the left is the case for the work days, which are all average cases for about 1 month, 30 days of values for
right. Okay.
For that value, for before the work days, and on the right side for the weekends.
Okay. Yeah. So thank you.